Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Andrea DeHaan. I'm the Outreach Coordinator for the College of Humanities and Social Sciences, and thank you so much for joining us today. Today's presentation is a special alumni presentation in the College of Humanities and Social Sciences, featuring some of our alumni who work in aspects of banking and finance, and they're going to be telling us a bit about their experience and how they got to where they're at currently. I do want to start off just by telling you a bit about how you as participants can participate today. Now, as you know, we can't see or hear you, but we can hear from you. So I'm going to go over just very quickly some features that will allow our participants to ask questions of our panelists. So you're welcome to use the chat feature to say hello or communicate any issues that might be happening to me directly. You can also ask questions using the Q&A feature. So take a moment while we're starting up to notice both that chat and Q&A feature likely located at the bottom of your screen. And then just know that you can find information about all of our presentations as well as recordings of today and previous presentations at our CHAS Alumni Lunch Series webpage. So please feel free to visit that after this presentation to go back and hear from other alumni who have been generous enough to participate in our series. I do want to take a moment just to introduce our guests before turning the time over to them. Justin Barnes is a Bank Secrecy Act risk analyst at Finwise Bank with 5 years of experience in anti-money laundering, fraud, and risk analysis. Justin began his banking career with Wells Fargo as a financial crime specialist and quickly made his way up. Justin has also worked as a fraud analyst with Zions Bank and as a Bank Secrecy Act anti-money laundering compliance analyst for SunWest. He is currently pursuing a Master's of Information Systems at the University of Utah with a focus on cybersecurity. He holds a BA in Law and Constitutional Studies from USU. Megan Getch works as a Human Resource Partner at Zions Bancorporation, where she supports risk and corporate credit. An experienced Assistant Vice President, she is passionate about human resources and people. And now with 6 years of experience in human resources, Megan initially earned her Master's of Human Resources from Utah State University, as well as her bachelor's degree in Communication Studies. And finally, Tabitha Perkins is originally from Tremonton and attended USU, where she was involved in student affairs and graduated in 2007 with a Bachelor of Science in Social Work and a minor in Human Resources. She worked in Washington, D.C. for 2 years before taking a hiatus to travel and work in Asia for a year. She received her master's degree in public administration from the U of U in 2015. And Tabby has worked for Zions Bank in downtown Salt Lake for the last decade and serves as a vice president of business development in their private banking department. Thank you and welcome to all of our panelists today. I'm going to take a moment to turn the time over to each of them, and we're just going to go in alphabetical order by last name. So I'm asking each of you to just briefly tell us a bit about your career path. You know, we're speaking to students today who are wondering how they're going to get from where they are currently to a successful and rewarding career. So if you could just each briefly take us through what your experiences have been like since you graduated from USU and finding yourself to the position you're in today. So Justin, we will start with you.
Thanks. So I graduated in 2014 and I wanted to go to law school, so I worked for a year and then I took off to Penn State Law, and I was there for about a year. It's a great school, I enjoyed it. We had a family death and I figured out while I was there that that's not really what I wanted to do. I wish I would have figured that out before I went to law school, but that's part of our discussion today, is figuring out, kind of pivoting from a career path that we originally wanted to do to something that we enjoy more, I guess. So then from there, I went to Wells Fargo and I did online fraud, which was really awesome. That's where I kind of started liking the tech part of fraud, and we would look at online transactions, just anything to do with online banking or online fraud, which was awesome. And then I went to Zions, where I did more fraud analysis on the check and mobile deposit side. And I really enjoyed that. But then I got into AML compliance. And that is what I've enjoyed a lot. And that's where I'm continuing to be. That you're trying to catch, it's still fraud, you're just trying to catch it on more white collar type fraud. It's a little trickier to catch, and then there's a lot of regulatory filings that you have to do in reports, and that's where I'm at today. So.
And Justin, just briefly, before we go to Megan, can you tell those of us who are not as familiar with the industry and with fraud and securities analysis, what does AML stand for?
Sorry, yeah, so AML is anti-money laundering, and BSA is the Bank Secrecy Act. So when 9/11 happened, there was a lot of terrorist financing that was going through shell companies. And so they basically made my job out of that to try to catch terrorist financing or other kinds of white collar money laundering crimes through people like me that have to file regulatory filings with the government when banks find something that looks suspicious or could potentially be terrorist financing, human trafficking, or drug-related money laundering.
Excellent. Thank you for that explanation. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Megan, we'll go to you next and hear a bit about your experience to date.
Absolutely. So hello, everyone. My name is Megan Getch, and I am a proud CHAS alumni. I'm such an advocate for all the things that I learned in my time as an Aggie. I do miss Logan a lot, but not the winters. So kind of some backstory. I studied communications where I had desires to become a speech pathologist. In my family, we have some stutterers, and I know the impacts that speech pathology have had on them and their lives. But, you know, life happens, and I made my way into the construction industry where I started in more of an administrative customer service role. And through my time there, I then became an HR manager, and I did bookkeeping. And, you know, I remember never thinking would I end up in HR, but now looking back, life led me there, and I can't imagine being in anything else. It definitely is something that I'm passionate about. And I went back to Utah State. I did the executive MHR program, which is wonderful. The director is Bruce Boucher, and it allows individuals working in HR to go to school. And there were, you know, awesome courses. And through that program, once I graduated, I began working at Zions Bancorporation as an HR generalist. And now I'm an HR business partner, which, you know, every organization kind of has different titles. So an HR business partner is a first point of contact for employees and business leaders and managers with anything in relation to HR. So maybe it's a question on payroll, or they're having interpersonal issues with someone in their staff. We help navigate through some really difficult conversations, but also some really fun ones, and helping individuals tap into their potential through targeted development, as well as promotions and really exciting conversations. So, you know, looking back, I had no idea where I would end up, but my word of advice to all of you is kind of let life happen. You know, through some jobs, all of a sudden I was in HR, and it feels like home. I'm very passionate. There's a lot of different ways in HR that you can go, whether it's being on the delivery side, which is what I currently do, or being a recruiter, you know, learning and development. There's a lot of components of human resources, and it's much more than the stigma of, you know, oh, you only hire and fire. There's so many intricacies, and it's really, really a great way to help people find something that they love and have a good career trajectory.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Megan. And finally, Tabby, we'll go to you and hear about your experience.
Yes, thank you everyone for being here. I am from Tremont, and as they mentioned, I went to Utah State and I loved it. I was really involved in all of the student activities and whatnot, and I really loved my time there. Upon graduation, I moved to, as I said, DC, and I kind of was reflecting today, thinking about, you know, college students right now, and how there were a couple of similarities maybe to when I graduated in 2007, because it was kind of right at the beginning of the recession. But I look back and I kind of, in just a little bit of awe, because I was so naive and I just didn't care. Like, I knew that I wanted to move to DC. I had lived there a couple of summers prior, and like, I didn't have a job, I didn't have any money, and I just didn't care. I remember my parents were like, why are you doing this? We're gonna have to bail you out. And I'm like, I'm scrappy, like I'm gonna figure it out. So I got to DC, and unfortunately I didn't get an internship in social work that I was excited about in my undergrad. But that ended up being like really good luck, because I just opened my eyes and I applied for all kinds of things. And I actually worked in executive suites in DC, which is essentially like, you know, people come in for a day, a year, a month, and they need office space. And it opened my eyes, because there was like the Ricky Martin Foundation, there was law firms, there was all these things that I hadn't necessarily been exposed to up to that point. And it kind of just like broadened my horizons. So I was there for 2 years. And then, you know, I started making friends with a lot of people that had traveled, and I hadn't really had that kind of opportunity in my life. And so on a whim, I just moved to Asia, and I worked and I taught English and I traveled. I was gone for almost a year. And then I ran out of money and I moved to Utah, because obviously I have family and friends that lived in Salt Lake. And I'm like, I'll try my luck at Salt Lake for a little bit. And as I was kind of writing notes on this, I had kind of forgotten. I went to an alumni event, a Utah State alumni event in Salt Lake, which I don't feel like I even get a lot of notifications on those anymore. So maybe Andrea, you can help me with that. But I made contact with a guy that worked at Zions, and I emailed him my resume. He sent it to HR. I interviewed a couple of times in at various departments, and ended up getting a decent starting job, which was really lucky. I want to rewind a second though. I got here, I didn't have a lot, it took a couple months to find a job, and I was working at Western Gardens, like their little garden shop, which was actually kind of a fun thing. And it was in the springtime, it was a couple of months. And I remember this guy just like kind of hiring me like really quick. And I was like, I don't know anything about plants. And he gave me really good insight that I've thought through a lot, that I want to propel a little bit to the next generation, if you will. He's like, you may not know a lot about plants, but you're eager to learn, and you're a pleasure to talk to, which I think is really what you're looking for in a client experience, right? So he's like, I know you won't be here very long, but like, you'll learn about plants, it'll be great. There was a couple of like odd jobs I had to take along the way before I found a full-time job, and it was kind of a fun little journey. And so within Zions though, my path has been 10 years. It's been a long time. I think I've had 5 or 6 jobs in that time frame. But I was fortunate, I got hired on doing special projects for an executive that reported directly to the CEO. And that was really fun. And it gave me a lot of confidence, because I thought coming into banking, I'm like, I don't have an accounting degree. I don't have a finance degree. I don't even have a business degree. So the first couple of years, I think I was a little bit insecure, thinking like everybody else has figured something out. I'm just like faking it here. But that's not the case. It just took me a couple of years to realize there's no path to banking. You can't study it. And there are so many people skills. And if you're eager to learn, you can learn about lending. You can learn about the things that we do to be successful as relationship managers. And if you're on a credit team, every job out there is looking for candidates that are eager to learn, because even today there are so many skills, and I'm embarrassed to say this candidly, but like there are a lot of things that tellers know about banking that I don't, because I didn't go that route. So a couple years into working at Zions, I was offered a job in the CEO's office, which I was like really scared about. I'm like, these people are really professional, and like they don't even know that I don't know anything about banking. But it was a wonderful opportunity that opened a lot of doors, because I'm personable, because I'm eager to learn, because I'm just scrappy, like I told my parents, right? So that opened a lot of doors, and in turn, I moved into a position with an executive that really helped push me along. Part of that was because I had started grad school, right? And so he realized I was hungry. I wanted to be doing more. I wanted to be learning a lot. And so he really propelled my career like several steps that might have taken years longer without him. But I look back and I think it was really rare to work with him because he'd be like, what do you think of this initiative? And, you know, he's like an executive at the bank. And I'm like, what do you care what I think? But that relationship became such a beautiful part of my profession because he valued me as an employee. He valued my input. He valued that like I communicate and I have critical thinking skills and I'm analytical and I might not know a lot about banking or even like the specific details of some of the projects they were doing, but I'm really good at like seeing the whole picture and taking a step back and being analytical, which a lot of that I learned in my schooling, right? And the other element too is that I always, if I can like stand on my own soapbox, I always prioritize people over a problem. And that gained his trust because he was going through a lot of personal problems at the time that we became like really close friends. And it kind of just like helped our relationship as professionals just be really safe, you know, to be vulnerable. So anyway, long story short, it's been a long career. And now, let's see, 2.5 years ago, I became a vice president over business development. And I do a lot of different projects in trying to teach private banking clients about all of the other wonderful services that we provide in wealth management. So I'm working with a lot of relationship managers and a lot of experts in trying to make sure that we are thinking forward for our clients and their needs and issues and whatnot. So I feel like I just talked a long time, so I think that's it.
Not at all. That was great, Tabby. Thank you so much. So now we're going to move through a few questions. And then again, from our audience, I see that people are starting to enter things into the Q&A. So keep that coming because we will save time at the end to get to your questions as well. But the first question, and again, I'm just going to throw this out to you as a panel. So whoever would like to pick this up first. You know, banking might seem at odds with the humanities, but obviously all of you found your way to it through, as you just shared, different experiences. But are there specific skills from your education that have helped you in your current career? For example, you know, Justin, you're working in security. So looking back, law school wasn't for you, but maybe something from law and constitutional studies helped you. Or, you know, Megan, you're talking about dealing with conversations where you're either sharing really great news with people about a promotion, but you may also be having difficult conversations. Are you using your communication skills to do that? And Tabby, you know, with a background in social work, again, not the avenue you chose, but, you know, are those skills that you're using to be, as you say, a person who puts people first? So I don't know who would like to start, but if you'd like to answer that, that would be great.
I can start. I think that for me, so I went to law school and, you know, you learn how to read the law, you learn how to read boring stuff that might be interesting to some people, but those laws apply to what I do every day. So I have to know what those laws mean and what they're saying. And so I'm able to apply that into what I do. But more than that, with the humanities, I think that for example, your employer probably won't care if you know Plato or some philosopher, but what they do care about is the things that you learned while you were reading those things or doing those things. For example, I think that empathy is one of the biggest skills that is needed and will increasingly become more needed as things become more automated and we live in a techie world. I think that, and like Megan and Tabitha have kind of said, like banking, who you are matters a lot. If you're able to reach out, not even to a customer, but if I need to reach out to like a branch manager about an issue that's going on, I can't just be like, wow, you guys did this. Why did you do this? You know, it might seem like completely dumb to us on our end, but they might have a reasonable explanation for why something happened the way it did. And I have to be personable and I have to use those people skills and have empathy and kind of try to see their side of it. So I don't go in guns a-blazing right off the bat for why I think something wasn't compliant or whatever the situation may be. So I think learning the things that you're learning, whether it's law and constitutional studies or whether it's humanities, and learning about what it is to be a person or a human, I think that goes a long way in what you do every day with the people you interact with, whether it's customer or your colleagues. I think that's a huge skill that's going to be increasingly needed, as well as the reading and writing that's heavy, usually in the social sciences and humanity. So that's all I have.
Awesome. Justin, those are so great. And, you know, it's been kind of fun. The past few days, I've been pondering all of my experiences, especially during my undergrad. And I just have two things that have really, really resonated well with me. And I don't know if Matt Sanders is still a professor, but he was very impactful to me. And his Becoming a Learner book, where we really talked about you have to learn how to learn effectively, is something that I've taken with me through life and through my career, right? Because the only constant is change, and we're going to have to learn, and we're going to have to adapt. And, you know, as we go through this pandemic, now we work from home, many of us, and trying to navigate through these uncharted territories and learn together. So that's one really big thing that stood out. And another, in a group communication class, we took some personality tests, and we were paired with individuals with different personalities than us. And the task was, you have $20 and you have to plan the perfect date. Well, if I was with individuals that were similar to me, very extroverted, very feely, you know, like to be out there, it would have been a pretty easy task. But it was challenging because we had a group of people that were all very different. And through that, I think it's really important to A, recognize your communication and work styles, and B, recognize others that you work with, because you have to effectively communicate with others. You have to be professional. And while we don't all think the same, that's a good thing, right? We came out with this really fun outcome of something that I might not have thought of. And it's something that really has taken me through my career, is recognizing that there are so many opportunities when people see things differently than you. And we don't get to pick who we work with, and we don't get to pick their personalities. So really, really being mindful and working together and really collaborating. And so I challenge you, if you haven't taken personality assessments, whether it's the DISC or Myers-Briggs, they have many options online. And through those, you get to know yourself and know how you can work with others in the best way possible.
I'm trying to think of some really insightful things. I feel like I touched on some of this previously, but I don't mean to pick on engineers, but I think about them a lot, and accountants, where it's like they have really hard skills. Like, I think is the word you would use for that, right? Like, they know programs, they know math, like they can draw stuff. But a lot of the work that they do, I think, is a bit isolating, and they sometimes have a very specific personality. I mean, we're College of Haas, like we're more social, we're more fun, so we can kind of poke fun at others, maybe. I don't know if that's appropriate, but I feel like my degree, being a student of, we called it Haas when I was there, so maybe that dates me quite a bit, but I was always a lot more social. And I think, as Justin and Megan kind of stated too, there's so much communication. And I also think approach, like in social work, I do reflect back, probably not often enough, but on just some of the almost like therapy type classes that we had on how to approach a problem and how do you talk to someone that's having a hard time. And like, I've had employees where like I've reflected on that of like, you know, can you tell me a time where you've done this? And I think we just have a lot more social skills. And I think that that's applicable obviously for any field, but with banking, I work a lot. I don't have my own set of clients, but I work with a lot of clients in varying degrees. And I feel that I think it's just really fun. Like, I am currently working with a lot of next generation clients. So a lot of our high net worth clients, I've kind of created a group that we're networking with their children, essentially to help them make sure that their businesses succeed and that they kind of have the resources that they need. And it's not even work. It's really fun. And my boss is really thrilled with it, because she's like, this is amazing. This group is like cohesive and you're getting together. And I'm like, we're probably not learning a lot, but like sometimes just having fun at work and having fun with the people you work with then creates, I think, a really productive workplace. So I don't know if I answered that or not, but there's some thoughts.
No, that was great. Thank you, everyone. And Tabby, you're right. We used to be Haas, but when the College of Art split off, the A became and instead of art, and we became the College of Humanities and Social Sciences. So But you are correct. So, and we've started to move into this, thinking about how, despite coming from a different background, you found your way to banking, and reflecting on some of those classes and skills that were valuable. What about the skills that you didn't learn in college, but you had to learn on your feet? So, you guys have touched on technical skills. Several of you have gone on to pursue advanced degrees, or you've had experiences living abroad or working in customer service or other areas that are different from where you are today. So, thinking of current students, what advice would you have for students who realize, okay, I love the humanities and social sciences, we are fun, we do come away with great soft skills, which I recently heard someone call power skills, which is going to be my new go-to from here. So we do come away with great power skills, but how do you go about, building out a suite of additional skills that you need for a specific career as you find yourself moving in that direction?
So when I think of that, I think, your network, right? It's okay to have formal or informal mentors, but LinkedIn is something that I think we should all utilize, right? And we can look out for each other. Maybe you see that someone that you are in school with then takes a job at this organization. You can ask them, what's their culture like? What do they look for in employees? What recommendations do you have for me if I'm interested in applying for a role there? But also just really staying in touch with your network and knowing when to ask questions, or maybe they're hosting a webinar that would be really helpful for you in working on a skill in your toolbox that maybe you want to sharpen. And so make sure you continue those relationships that you're building right now through your career, because you might cross paths, or they might be, someone that you just want to get lunch with and say, what have you been up to? What has helped you to be successful? And that's something I think is a lot easier now than in the past, because we have social media and we have LinkedIn and a lot of different opportunities. But, don't sleep on how beneficial a great network of your fellow Aggies can be, because we all want to see each other succeed in whatever capacity we can help contribute to that.
I would say don't be afraid of job titles, and don't be afraid of learning new skills. I think for me, I was so focused on law, like I wanted to go to law school, law. I had never spoken to a lawyer other than the professors that are at the school. And they told me not to do it if you're not 100% on it. And I thought I was, but when I got to law school, I realized this is kind of depressing. It's not what I want to do. People are in trouble when they find a lawyer, and you have to deal with those hard problems. And if you're not ready for that, then it might not be the right choice for you. But after that, when I came back from law school and I was looking for a job, I would get sent things and think, no, I don't want to do that. That's not for me. And then finally, eventually, I just took one, and that's led me to where I'm at today. And I wish that I hadn't been as stubborn and thought, oh, I don't have the skills, or, oh, that's not for me. That's not my personality. I shot so many things down at first, and I'm glad I ended up where I am. And I'm glad that I got the skills that I got. But had I not been as stubborn and more open to different skills and different things, I think that would have accelerated me a lot quicker. And what Megan said about the Myers-Briggs test, I took that, and that was like phenomenal in finding out about myself and who I am. So I'm not like the most extroverted person in the world, even though that's usually associated with us. But because of that, I learned like a back end position where I'm looking for money laundering or fraud is good for me, because I'm able to be my little weird introvert self with all the other risk people that are kind of in the background working on stuff. And yeah, I would just say don't be afraid of new skills. There are a lot of new skills out there that are presented to you, and it might sound very technical and it might sound scary, but once you jump into it and start learning it, you're like, this isn't as hard as I thought it was. We put those mental barriers in our way ourselves, and if you can knock those down, the sooner the better, I think.
Justin, I love that idea of mental barriers, because even how I want to answer this question is probably different than you were thinking initially. But I actually, as much as I want to make fun of accountants, I was always good at math, and I started going down the accounting path, and I was so intimidated, I think, this is like a generational systemic problem, but I think I was like, there's a lot of men in this room. I don't fit in. I'm probably not smart enough. Which I like kick myself for, because I maybe wouldn't have liked it, but that should have been why I didn't want to study it. But I felt really nervous about being in a classroom surrounded by men. But my undergrad and my master's, you know, there's a lot of women also that study public administration anyway. But it's funny because I go to meetings a lot of times, and I, at times, am the only woman in the room. You know, I go to client meetings up in Cache Valley, up in Idaho, down in St. George, and regionally, it's very cultural. There's definitely different groups of places. Davis County sometimes, I don't mean to pick at anybody, but there are times when I go to regional meetings and I will be the only female in the room. And it doesn't bother me anymore. So that's not something that I learned in college. It was something I was kind of scared of back then. But I realized by not being afraid, you acknowledge, like, I have a different skill set. I have a different background. I have different, just like, gender perspective on a lot of things. And it's a beautiful, wonderful thing. But it took me far too long to like raise my hand and be like, I don't agree with you, because I felt like the outsider, instead of knowing that they need more perspectives that are different, you know. The other thing that I'm still not great at, but I'm trying really hard, is as a professional, you're offered a job, there's a salary tied to it. Is it what you want to be making? Are you worth more? I really enjoy looking at different things on Glassdoor, is a website. I feel like all the students now are far more tech savvy than I am, but it's good to just look at other jobs in other departments or in other fields and kind of figure out what your range is. And I have watched so many male professionals, like once a year, be like, I want a raise. And men somehow are not afraid to ask for it. And women are like, I don't know that I've been doing a good enough job, and maybe I make plenty. We always discount ourselves. And I'm trying really hard with every job offer to be like, I was looking to make this. And you just state a number in the sand. And this is something that they made legal. I mean, Megan's more qualified to talk about this, but in California a couple years ago, that like a new job, they can't ask what you're making. They can ask what you're looking to make. So like, never to undervalue yourself, especially if you know that you can and you should be making more, to kind of like aim for that. I don't know if that's even allowed, Megan, for me to say that, but I think especially as women in the workforce, it's hard, and you are your own advocate. No one is going to do it for you. Luckily, I've had some really good bosses that the conversation was always really easy, and they're really fair, and they'd be like, you know, here's the job scale, and if we want to bump you up, we have to change your job description and whatnot. But those are things they didn't teach me in college.
Thank you. Those were all great experiences to share. And I feel like you guys have all set me up to put in a quick plug for USU Career Services, whom I work with carefully, because you've touched on several things. For our audience listening today, you should know that as students, you have access to career services where they can offer you personality and job placement tests. And those things are either free or they're pretty low cost. They're certainly cheaper to take as a student than taking a Myers-Briggs test with a professional once you graduate. And they can also help you with, you know, job shadowing. You know, Justin mentioned he had never even talked to a lawyer, but he thought this was the experience he wanted to go for, you know, and Megan talked about networks. You really can use those resources that they have to say, hey, I'd like to come just sit in and see what your day looks like, right? To try to figure those things out to see if something is right for you. And in terms of what Tabby talked about, career services can also help you with salary negotiations. So if you're going through an interview and hiring process and you get to that point and they've offered something to you and you say, you know, you want a few days to think about it, take the time to touch base with career services, because they can give you some great pointers on how to get through all of those things. But those are all great real world examples to share with current students about how there are things you just have to learn to have confidence in and learn on your feet. This one hopefully will be easy for all of you to answer, which is just to tell us, what is it you like best about your job, and how do you continue to grow as a professional?
I'll take this one. So what I like the most about my job is that I feel like I hope that I'm making a difference, especially with what I do being tied to money laundering and potentially like terrorist financing or human trafficking. Like every night that I go to bed, catching something or stopping something makes me feel like I made a difference. And I'm not saying that you have to do anything like that at all to make a difference. But what I'm trying to say is that you should find something that makes you happy. And it's not going to always make you happy. Like, I'm not going to lie, there's a lot of boring, mundane parts of my job. But I found something that overall, when I lay my head down at night, I'm happy what I'm doing. And there's struggles, that's part of life, that's just work, that's going to come every day. It's going to be boring some days. But if overall, if you have that inner happiness, I think that you'll continue to work and you'll be happy in your job, and you'll see colleagues that aren't happy doing what you know, in the same department as you, they're not happy. And that's not a knock on them, but they can figure out what does make them happy. And once they find that, then they'll know they're in the right career, because you'll be at peace with yourself and you'll be happy doing what you're doing day in and day out. So I think that's really important. Is it's not going to be perfect. Don't look for perfection, but look for something that makes you happy.
I love that, Justin. It's such a great reminder, because we control our own happiness, and sometimes your job can make that a lot easier or more challenging. But you know, I said earlier, I am a people person. I love people. They energize me. And so in HR, I get many, many touch points with people, and I like feeling like I can help them, whether it's helping someone get on an FMLA leave, explaining a policy to them, or giving them some tips and best practices for navigating a challenging discussion. And a couple of things that, you know, really have helped me continue to grow and that I want to never forget is just really always seeking out opportunities, whether it's for a stretch project, maybe it's across a department that you don't specialize in, raising your hand and being willing to say, you know what, I don't know everything about that, but I would love to be a part of that process. Let's think together, and maybe my perspective could bring a different side to this project. And, you know, having informal mentors and individuals that you can just kind of run things by, say, you know, this situation, have you ever seen anything like this? I don't know where to start or how to navigate. And so I think it's really great to find others that are willing to share and that you can shadow. And last but not least is like being okay with being new at something, kind of like what Justin mentioned. You can never just become an expert overnight. So it's okay to not know everything, but if you have the desire to learn, and if you're willing to accept feedback, hopefully that's very constructive feedback, you might become an expert, and that might be your favorite component of your job. For example, I'm not a very analytical person. Well, I had no idea that data and HR went hand in hand, right? Now, a lot of HR decisions are data driven. Well, I never took an interest in Excel or, you know, looking at something analytically. So it's been uncomfortable. But as, you know, I put myself in situations where I can be more analytical, I'm becoming more comfortable, and it actually is something that I enjoy. So it's okay not to be an expert. And no one expects you to be an expert in everything, not your employer, you know, not your friends. And so just kind of be easy on yourself as you're learning.